many people this year, Talmidim, friends, something to the extent that Elul's been canceled this year. The way that Elul coincides with the secular calendar, the month of Elul, the Hachana, the Yemei Hadin, is very, very short. Most of us have still been in summer mode the first couple weeks of Elul. In many yeshivas that traditionally begin Rosh Chodesh Elul, this year they began 2 weeks in. We still haven't begun here yet. And therefore, there's very little time to prepare. Very little time to get ready for these special days that are coming upon us. Truth is, personally, most years, on a very personal level, it's very hard to feel the Yom Aryeh. Yes, Rosh Chodesh Elul, we begin blowing shofar, we begin saying L'David Hashem Oyer V'Yishi. But personally, it's this night, Leil Selichot, standing and listening to the Kaddish of the Yom Aryeh, the haunting melody of the Kaddish, the Selichos, the Tfilos. That's where generally I begin to feel that these are days that are very special, days that have to be taken seriously. I had a student earlier this week that called me up and asked how they should be preparing for Rosh Hashanah, how they should be preparing for Yom Kippur. And this young woman told me that every single day, at night before she goes to sleep, she takes a cheshbon hanefesh. She does introspection and she writes down what she needs to work on, what she didn't do as well as she could have that particular day. And she asked me if it would be appropriate, if I think she should go back and read over all of her notes and look at and analyze all of the different things that she has done wrong. Is that what these days are for? Is that what Yemei Elul is about? And immediately I thought about something I saw earlier that day. I happened to be, beginning of the week, in Lancaster, Pennsylvania with my Mashgiach, and we visited the Hurrah's Snack Factory. We were watching there the factory, and they were telling us and showing us how potato chips are made. We had the ability, we had the schus to have potato chips that were 9 minutes earlier, a real potato. Kids really enjoyed it. It was very special. And there was one part on the conveyor belt that was amazing to me. You saw these potato chips speeding by 45 miles an hour under this light that the tour guide explained was a laser light that was able somehow, as the potato chips, and this was, I'd say, a conveyor belt about 6 feet wide, hundreds of potato chips, thousands perhaps a minute, speeding by under this light. And this light was able to pick out any potato chip that was green or brown. And if it caught a green or brown potato chip, it sent a message. Underneath the conveyor belt, there were these air guns that were able to shoot up air and knock the potato chip off the conveyor belt so that it wouldn't end up in any of our snack bags. 97% accuracy. Din. Imagine the Rabbi Shalom is going to analyze every segment of our bodies, every act that we've done, look ourselves over. A pachad, a daiga, is that what we are supposed to be doing now? Are we supposed to be finding the green and brown spots within each and every part of our bodies? It's very difficult. It's very scary. So I thought of a mashal the Chafetz Chaim once gave. There was a soldier in the Russian army. Many, many years. Was in the Russian army for a very long time. And eventually the Tsar came to him and said, "You've been such a devoted soldier all these years. I'd like to reward you. Any request you have, it's yours." And the soldier thinks to himself for a while and comes back to the Tsar. And the soldier says, I'm an older man already, and the food that the army gives us is not so nutritious, not so delicious. I'd love to have the food that the generals eat. If it's possible, if the Tsar could provide me with all the food that the general eats. The Tsar says, for sure, no problem. If that's your request, granted. Do you have any other requests? He says, I have one other request. These barracks, these wooden barracks that we have to sleep on, they're very hard on my back. Very difficult to sleep, very uncomfortable. Perhaps the Tsar could also give me a bed. A comfortable bed like the general sleeps in. I'd love to sleep in that comfortable bed that the general has. And the Tsar says, no problem. We'll get you a nice comfortable bed, some down pillows, down blankets, whatever you'd like, just like the general has. The soldier leaves the Tsar all excited. What wonderful requests have been granted. He's going to eat well, he's going to sleep well. And he sees his friend, some Yid, in the army, and he goes over to this Yid and he says, you'll have no idea. The Tsar just came over to me and granted me any request, and he's going to feed me the food of the general, and I'm going to sleep in the bed of the general. And the Yid, who was a Bar Chachma, a wise man, he says, why didn't you just ask to be the general? If you were actually a general, so you have Alamilas, everything wonderful that the general gains, the food, the bed, the transportation, everything would be yours. You're only asking for your food and your bed. We as well, we could go through this month, the Yimei Hadin, and analyze and scrutinize a couple different places within our Avodas Hashem, and beseech of the Ribono Shalom to grant our tefillos in certain areas. Or we could throw ourselves in to become a true Eved Hashem, a true Ben Melech, to rebuild our relationship with the Ribono Shalom. If we rebuild our relationship with the Ribono Shalom, if we act like a son, like a prince to the Ribono Shalom, so of course everything that we ask for, everything that we need, the Ribono Shalom will answer it all. So how do we rebuild this relationship? How do we accomplish what Elul is all about? Ani l'dodi v'dodi li. Ani l'dodi v'dodi li. I am to my beloved is to me. How do I rebuild that deep, special relationship with the Ribono Shalom? I believe it's actually very simple. And it's really the source and the key, the makar, and the root of what tshuva is all about. Tshuva, which is to return back to that relationship, to return back to the Ribono Shalom. The Medrash tells us that the first person to be Mekayim tshuva, the first person to do tshuva in the Torah is Reuven. In Parshas Vayeshev, the pasuk says, "Vayashav Reuven el Habar." Reuven returns to the pit. Vayos v'tzadik, and the Medrash there tells us that this is the first case of tshuva in the Torah. Very hard to understand. There are other Mamre Chazal that explain that Adam Rishon did tshuva after eating from the Eitz Hadas, and thereby composed Mizmor Shir Liyam HaShabbos, as Akar Satov, for HaKadosh Baruch Hu accepting his tshuva. Other Chazal teach us that Cain did tshuva after killing Hevel. What does it mean that Reuven was the first to perform tshuva? And what was the tshuva upon? Rashi tells us the tshuva was upon that act that we know that Reuven switched the beds. We know that his father, after Rachel Imenu passed away, decided to take his bed and put it in the tent of Bilhah, the maidservant of Rachel. And Reuven thought that was a lack of kavod, a lack of respect for his own mother Leah, and switched the beds. What's the connection to Vayashav Reuven el Habar? Why now is then Reuven doing tshuva on that act because of Yosef being in the pit?